Off you go, Alan.
Thank you, David, and good morning to everybody on what is a sunny but cold morning here in the northeast of England. Hopefully, it's as pleasant in the Edinburgh region for everybody on the call this morning, and you have a nice day planned ahead. I hope everybody can hear me. This is a very informal presentation, so if at any time you would like to ask a question, feel free to do so just by unmuting your microphone and just shouting out. I have two screens. Your Zoom screen may not be visible on one of the two screens that I have, so apologies if I don't see any emoji to suggest that you want to ask a question, but David might be able to generally chair the session and shout out and stop me if anyone does want to ask a question. Or indeed, if you don't want to turn off your microphone, feel free to pop your question in the chat window, but obviously I can take questions and we can have a bit of discussion afterwards as well. So I am sharing my screen and hopefully you can see that. Hopefully David can give me a nod.
Yeah, that looks good.
Looks good, thank you. So as David said, I'm Alan Godfrey and I'm based at Northumbria University, and I am delighted to be joined by my colleague on this collaboration, Encarna, who, as David alluded to, is based at Heriot-Watt University. Actually, interestingly, myself and Encarna have some prior history with Newcastle University. I worked there for many years, and Encarna worked there on a project that I will briefly describe in a couple of moments' time before we respectively moved to Northumbria University and Heriot-Watt University. And as you can see on the screen, we have colleagues based at Liverpool John Moores University because they have expertise in eye tracking, which I will come to in a few moments' time, as well as other falls and Parkinson's researchers based at the University of Bradford as well. So as you can imagine, it's quite a big team, quite a diverse team. So what we're going to talk about this morning is a very ambitious project to tackle falls within those people that are 65 and older. So as we probably all know, falls are a major problem generally across the UK population. In fact, for those that are over 65 years, it is a major problem that can obviously have very serious injury. There's lots of different stats on the screen, but one of the things that the funder that David alluded to, which is the NIHR, the National Institute for Health Research, what they're really interested in is reducing costs associated with falls for those that are at risk of falling to reduce the overall costs to the NHS. And as you can see on the screen, at a moment in time, it costs the NHS about 2 billion, probably even more, based on the aging population and the rate in which people do fall, etc., etc. But one of the groups that's at risk of falling are people with Parkinson's disease. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, and as everybody probably is very familiar with, there's a lot of different symptoms associated with Parkinson's that potentially can lead to a fall event. Now, one of the most important aspects of the Parkinson's symptoms is walking. And specifically, the study of walking is something that I've done for about 15 or 16 years, previously at Newcastle University and prior when I was based in Ireland, as well as most recent work at Northumbria as well. And this is something that Encarna is very interested in, well, in terms of looking at how people walk, studying how they walk, so on and so forth. So you might think, maybe or maybe not, that walking is a fairly routine task, but we know that it's not, especially if somebody has Parkinson's disease. How you walk is massively affected, and that can obviously have major consequences in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis, in terms of being able to go to the shop or go out and meet your friends, whatever the case may be. And so walking is a really complex thing to understand and to examine. And if we break down walking into all its different nuances, there's many different things that we can begin to examine. And this is something that myself and Encarna do in terms of the research at our respective universities. We try and understand gait within Parkinson's to see how we can help people improve their walking and ultimately reduce their risk of falls. And this is obviously very particular within Parkinson's because it has so many challenges associated with it and how that impacts day-to-day living. And as I say, going out for walks or just being able to pop down to the shop for the paper. So in this particular instance, we can see this person on the screen here has a particular challenge when it comes to turning. So this is another area of research that is really pertinent in terms of the work that myself and Encarna do, not only just looking at walking, but mobility in general. Now, for many years, walking analysis has been studied, and this might be the traditional example of somebody when they go to a gait lab within either Northumbria University or Heriot-Watt University. It's not very normal for people to walk under these conditions with all the different types of technology that might be around them, or indeed all the different types of technology that might be put on their person, for us to understand all the little nuances associated with gait in terms of how the foot strikes the floor, how the foot travels through the air, how the body travels through space, so on and so forth. And so there is a real demand to be able to really understand how people move and walk within their natural environments, because there are so many real world challenges that we have to overcome when we're walking down Princes Street, for example, in terms of all the different types of pavement, all the obstacles, never mind all the people that might be around us as we begin to walk. And so there is a paradigm shift, i.e. there's a shift in terms of how we want to be able to assess people. We don't really want to be assessing people in the lab, because people generally don't normally walk as they would normally do at home in a lab. There is a desire to be able to assess people within what we call free living conditions. So as people are at home or indeed out and about doing their normal routines of activity. Now, wearable technology is something that is really interesting for me and Encarna, because wearable technology has advanced a lot over the last 20 years especially. So about 20 years ago, I began investigating the use of wearable technology for human movement analysis. And back then, we had devices that had wires coming out of them, and there were wires going from your head to your arms and all the way down to your feet. And that was a useful means to an end to be able to really investigate this as a field of research. But contemporary technologies are now enable myself and Encarna to be able to capture very rich data. But those devices, thankfully, are now really, really small, so they can be worn very discreetly on your hand, on your wrist, underneath your clothing, whatever the case may be. Now, interestingly, for gait analysis, especially within Parkinson's, the field of research has focused on the use of a single device on the lower back. And some of you may be familiar with this from any research that you might have read, etc., or news items that you have seen. So wearing something around your waist can be very discreet, because you could have it under your jumper or just attached to your belt. And generally, the type of research that myself and Encarna have done, along with many other research groups globally, is that we can deploy these technologies for many hours, days, or even weeks to be able to understand how people move within their natural environments, within their home and free living. So I should just mention that there has been a recent project which has finished, which really examined the use of a device on the lower back for gait and turning and movement in general within Parkinson's disease, as well as other clinical groups. And this is something that Encarna has experienced when she was working at Newcastle University. And in a nutshell, what this project did was really rubber stamp the fact that all the data coming from these devices, when we get people to wear them, really gives us very good data on how people walk. So it really rubber stamped the whole idea that you can give somebody a device, get them to wear it for a period of 7 days, and all the data that you get back from it is really, really informative to understand how people move and walk in free living around their home, and then using said data to be able to determine what fall risk that person may be at. However, there's a but, and I can tell you it is a very, very, very big but. And let me explain why. So the type of data that comes from a device on the lower back is what you see on the screen here. And this is interesting from a research perspective. And I don't expect you to understand all the variables associated with it, but some of them may mean something to you. But physiotherapists would be really interested in this type of data, because it gives somebody an indication of how well somebody is walking within their home. So what I wanted to draw your attention to are the 5 different columns from #1, #2, all the way to #5 on the right-hand side of the table. And as you can see, they're labeled under outdoor environments. So these are walks, 5 walks that somebody has done beyond the lab. And that can be really, those data on the screen are really interesting from a physiotherapy perspective. Now, as you can see, or maybe the eagle eye of you out there has spotted that there is something a little bit unusual about columns 4 and 5. So at these 2 moments in time, you can see that the data is much bigger in comparison to the columns labeled 1, 2, and 3. Now, the current approach is that this suggests that the person who was wearing the device and gave us the data suggested that at these moments in time, because these values are much bigger, they're at an increased risk of falling. And if we look at the data, I know this might be a little bit confusing, but if we look at the data rising from the devices, this is what the signals look like, and this is what the ultimate data in the table is derived from. But the problem is that when we look at these data, we simply do not know what is actually happening in free living. So, for example, because columns 4 and 5 are suggesting that somebody's at an increased fall risk, is that something due to their Parkinson's disease, or is it actually something in the environment that's causing these data to be a little bit abnormal? Current state of the art is that we simply do not know, because when somebody was wearing said device around their waist and we were trying to look at their gait, they could have been in an environment like this. So here, for example, is just a cluttered environment, and people are having to step over different things on the floor, and because they have to step over different things on the floor, walk around boxes, whatever the case may be, that is suggesting that they're at an increased fall risk. But they may not be, because they might simply be adapting to their environment. So current state of the art and the unmet need as defined by recent guidelines to NICE, which is the guidance committee and guidance organization to suggest how innovation in healthcare can move forward, suggest that wearable technology is at the cusp of being really good, but there is still an unmet need to really understand falls in those that are 50 and over, or 65 and over. And this overlaps with the grant application that myself and Encarna and the others are targeting, because this funder has suggested that wearables, as I alluded to, are really useful to get very rich data. So why aren't they actually transitioning into routine clinical care? And so, as I alluded to, the data arising from a device on the lower back is really good, but we simply don't know the context in terms of where that person is walking and why the data arising from those devices might be a little bit abnormal. And the next picture on the screen here really draws attention to the fact that they want to really understand why wearable technologies and what is needed for wearable technologies to be able to be used in those that are at risk of falling. So what we're suggesting and what we're aligning to from what the Mobilise D project was that you can simply wear a device on the lower back, and that will give really good data on somebody's fall risk. But what we're suggesting as part of this collaboration and this research project is that we supplement that wearable on the lower back with an additional wearable. So what we're suggesting is that we're not suggesting that people wear cameras because that will look a little bit silly, like GoPro cameras on their head or shoulder or body. But what we're utilizing are other commercial wearables which have cameras embedded in the frames. So what we've done at Newcastle and Northumbria University over the last few years is use eye tracking video glasses. Now these glasses are really interesting because they have a camera embedded in the frame that points out. So we get video recordings of where the person is, what they're doing, the type of environment they're walking in, the type of terrain they're walking on, etc. But it also has a camera that points back at the eye, and that's really important as well. So we can understand and investigate what people are looking at when they're in environments such as this one. Are they actually looking at things on the floor to recognize that there are things on the floor and so that they need to step over them? Do they recognize that there's a plastic bag with some clothing that needs to go to the charity shop on the bottom right, so that they step over or around that bag, etc., etc. So having these two types of devices really completes the picture, no pun intended, in terms of being able to really understand the context in terms of where people are walking and why they might have poor gait, which would suggest that they're at an increased risk of falling. Now, as you can imagine, capturing video data in the home is ethically challenging, because that might lead to very sensitive information being collected in terms of having grandkids in the video frame, going into bathrooms, so on and so forth, and all the connotations associated with that. So what we've developed at Northumbria University are artificial intelligence AI approaches to be able to assess the video. So what we've done is gather video data. No human looks at the video data, but we use AI to interpret the video scene for us. So specifically, the AI looks at the video and it tells us that it's a busy environment. They're indoors. There's a chair to the left. There's couple of people in the environment. It doesn't say who those people are. It just says that there are people. And within their walking path, there's clutter on the floor. So in this particular example, if we have abnormal gait data, we know that the person is simply trying to navigate around different things within the video or within the environment, that they have to step over clutter. There's people in the environment that they might have to walk around, or indeed there's a dog, as you can see in the middle of the picture, an animal. There is an animal in the video, and so they have to attend to that dog and make sure that the dog doesn't get between their feet, so on and so forth. Now, also what I want to draw your attention to is the big red circle on the left of the picture. Previously, I said that the eye tracking video glasses have a video that points out so we can see the environment, but they also have a camera that points back at the eye. That red dot tells us where the person is looking. So when we try to understand how people navigate and walk through really busy environments where there might be clutter on the floor, we can see and examine if they are actually looking at the clutter on the floor. And that's really important within a fall risk assessment, to make sure that people are aware of obstacles and hazards within their environment, so that if a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist was to try and help them navigate their home environment and their routine community environment, that they would devise strategies for them at an individual level to be able to walk safely without an increased risk of falling. So I'm just going to touch a little bit more on this in terms of the richness of using the eye tracking video glasses. I'll talk you through each one of these. So A and B are two different scenarios from work that we've done with people with Parkinson's in the Northeast. The images to the left are just the signals that myself and Encarna are interested in analysing. But we don't have to go into great detail in terms of what they mean. But as you can see, there is a difference between the signals on the top left and the bottom left. One signal at the top is very rhythmical. It's a kind of a nice pattern of the signal going up and down in a very routine pattern. And we can then understand why the gait data is like that, because on the right-hand side of that signal, we can see that someone's outdoors, but they're on a flat, level surface. There's no obstacle in their path. But in comparison to the image on the bottom, we can see that the signal is a bit weird. There's something unusual going on. Now, previously, we wouldn't have been able to understand the context, but because of the approach that we take with the eye tracking video glasses and our AI, we can see that at that moment in time, the person isn't actually at an increased risk of falling. They're simply walking through a door and going down the steps. So in this particular instance, the person was confident to be able to navigate that particular scenario. And again, just not to spend too long on this, but just two other examples. Here we can see on the top, the person is about to walk in through their back door. So the top trace on C, which is the very top signal, is nice and rhythmical because they're walking on a flat level surface. And then the signal goes a little bit funny, as denoted by the red square or the red rectangle. And that's because they're walking up the steps. So because we have all this video data, which has been interpreted by AI, it really allows us to understand all the type of data arising from the device worn on the lower back. And the last example is just, again, where the person is indoors and the purple or the kind of bluey box that you see, which kind of identifies that the gait signal has gone a little bit funny, that is simply due to the fact that they have an animal. Again, it's the dog within the living room, and the dog is within their immediate path. So the person in this particular instance has to shift slightly to the right to navigate around the dog, or to make sure that he or she doesn't trip over the dog. And what's really interesting is that if you can see it, there's a blue circle which suggests that the person at that moment in time actually recognizes that the dog is about to crash into this person, and he or she sees the dog, acknowledges the dog, and moves slightly to the right to make sure that they don't crash into the dog and fall over. So the gathering of these video data, it's much more beneficial in comparison to assessing people in the lab, because these are the real world scenarios in which people's gait might be affected to suggest that they're an increased risk of falling, and indeed fall, trip, stumble, etc. So the two wearable approach allows us to be able to really investigate someone's fall risk within their own environment. So it's very personal, rather than it being a very generic one-size-fits-all approach to be able to understand walking simply from a device on the lower back. So that is the main crux of the project in terms of using AI in the two wearables to really understand gait at an individual level in people's own homes. Using AI to give a textual description. So I did show images of a participant's home there. Nobody would actually see that, and that's only just for illustrative purposes this morning. So you get a good understanding of what the AI is doing. But what actually the AI will do is provide a textual description of someone's indoors, outdoors. They're walking on a flat level surface. They're just about to come to some stairs. They're just about to go into the door. There's a dog or a cat just about to run under their feet, so on and so forth. So what the AI will do is give a textual description along with the data, the numbers associated with somebody's walking. And that will be used by a physiotherapist and occupational therapist to help somebody improve their walking and mobility within their own home and wider community. So on the right-hand side of the screen here, you see that there is dialogue between an occupational therapist at the top and a physical therapist on the bottom. So where the AI recognizes that there are no obstacles in the hallway, but the AI tells us that at that moment in time there was poor lighting, an occupational therapist can utilize that information arising from the approach that we're suggesting to work with the person to suggest that I recommend placing a chair halfway down the hall, so that if you're having a bad day, you have that as a mechanism just to briefly stop, rest, and make sure that your gait is okay for you to continue, or have a little rest on the seat before you progress. And indeed, maybe just think about getting your husband or wife or care partner or son or daughter or grandchild around to change the light bulb and put a light bulb in there with greater luminescence so you can clearly see everything within the hallway. And equally, a physical therapist using the gait data along with the contextual information will begin to offer strategies for how that person who is at an increased risk of falling might be able to better walk within their own home, in terms of using cues within the home environment to be able to regulate their stepping, to make sure that those data that were in the red box, i.e. that they were really high, are a bit more normal in terms of making sure that the gait is stable and somebody can walk in a safe manner by using visual cues like stepping into tiles in the kitchen or the hallway or whatever the scenario might be. So where are we at? Myself and Encarna have worked pretty hard on the proposal. It is due for submission on the 2nd of December. I've talked to a lot of physical therapists, occupational therapists. We obviously have our academic partners at all the universities on the screen. We also have physiotherapists and occupational therapists, as I alluded to, but from across different trusts within the UK, to offer us advice on making sure that what we do is grounded and fit for purpose. And we have engaged with people with Parkinson's in the northeast region, the northwest region. I'm obviously here today to chat to you as well, to receive feedback on our stage 1 proposal. We're a little bit close to the window now because it has to be submitted by the 2nd of December, but I would hope that we get to stage 2, which would be around April time of next year. And at stage 2, we would love to receive feedback, comments, critique on the work that we have proposed at stage 2, which will be much more detailed than what it currently is at stage 1. Stage 1 is a 5-page document. Stage 2 is a much meatier 12 or 15-page document, so there'll be a lot more detail in there. And so, yeah, if anyone is interested in seeing this work develop, hopefully at stage 2, and it would be great to keep in contact with you to share news of the work, hopefully as it progresses, because the NIHR like it and want us to submit a full proposal by May of next year. My email is on the screen. If there's any question or thought or comment that pops into your head after this discussion this morning, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to have a chat, email correspondence with anyone if they want to keep up to date with the work and the progress that myself and Encarna and the rest of the collaboration are doing. And certainly at stage 2, if we are funded, we will be running focus groups, workshops, and having people volunteer to wear the technology in the home. So hopefully if we can get to that stage, i.e. receive all the money that we were talking about earlier, then it would be great to work with you and to receive your comments and feedback in time to help us progress what I believe is really important and unmet need of work. So thank you for listening. Hopefully that wasn't OTT in terms of content, but if you have any thoughts or comments, I'm all ears and looking forward to having a discussion and chat.